Không hiểu.
Trời ơi! Welcome everyone to the first lesson in this series for language learners wanting to study Vietnamese. This is lesson 1 or bài học 1. And by the end of this lesson, you should be able to say your phone number using the correct pronunciation. Now, the number system of any language is fairly fundamental, but we're not just going to arbitrarily go through a vocabulary list of numbers, but rather we're going to use this as the communicative goal for this lesson. Now, I know my phone number in Vietnamese better than English. It just comes to my mind quicker because I've had to say it so many times. Like when I meet a new friend, a new colleague, going to the bank, etc. Now, in order to get here, especially the last part, using the correct pronunciation, we need to be able to pronounce some difficult sounds not found in English, and we need to have an awareness of the Vietnamese tonal structure. So this first lesson will be quite pronunciation heavy, so let's just get right into it. Pronunciation, difficult sounds, or phát âm kha. And the first thing you'll notice is that Vietnamese words only have one syllable, phát but combined together they make a polysyllable, which has more meaning. So for example, phát means to emit, means sound, phát to emit sound or pronunciation. And kha meaning difficult. So here you can see, like in many languages, the adjective comes after the noun. This is a blowfish. You can see its cheeks are puffed out, which creates a larger, more resonant cavity inside its mouth. And this is exactly what you need to do in order to pronounce this number. Kham. You will also notice the first KH sound is quite guttural, like kham. And the final NG digraph is not pronounced as in we would in English, but kham. And I'm calling this the blowfish M sound because even though it's spelt with an NG, it is more reminiscent of an or M sound. So make sure your mouth is closed, your cheeks are puffed, and the sound comes out through your nose. Kham. Now look at these three words: duck, stuck, and tuck. Now look at the middle one again, stuck. Now elongate that initial S sound. Stuck. Stuck. Now try and lose the S sound, but pronounce it the same way. And you should have duck. Duck. So it's not duck, it's not tuck, it's duck. Duh. And this is how we find the number tam, which is 8. So we can find the sound from English, but it only comes after a consonant cluster starting with an S. So take any word that starts with ST, like stick or stone, and just try and elongate that S sound and try and lose that S sound, and you will have the correct sound. Your tongue should end up behind your front teeth to make the sound. And this sound produces no air, no vibration, so it is an unvoiced, unaspirated sound. Now let's quickly have a look at a native Vietnamese speaker saying these two words.
Không tám. Không tám.
Okay, now let's look at probably the biggest phonological difference between English and Vietnamese, aside from tones, and that is tiếng Việt không có âm cuối, or Vietnamese has no final sounds. Now this English word is moat. Moat. T. The final t sound is clearly audible. There is a release of air. Compare that with mot. Mot. There is no audible release of air. You don't hear the final da sound, which we looked at a minute ago. What's happening here in Vietnamese is that when you get to the final sound, you move the tongue position into the place where you would pronounce a sound, but instead you just almost swallow the sound. You don't pronounce it. So it's not mot, it's mot. A problem with many foreigners learning Vietnamese is they will just see this final sound and pronounce it the way they normally would. So they would say mot. But it is worth noting that with this final coda sound, it's not a real final sound because we don't hear it, but it does change the vowel quality. If I were to not say that final da sound, it would be mo, mo. With the coda, mo, 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 mo. There's a subtle difference that you should be able to hear with that. Now, to further exemplify this point, look at the following three words. Cá, cát, cát, which respectively mean fish, sand, and cát is a plural marker you use before nouns to show pluralization. Now, let me say those again. Cá, cát, cát. There is no audible release because there's no actual final sound, but the vowel sound is constructed in some way, and so each syllable has a different quality and are discernible from one another.
Cá, cát, két. Cá, cát, két.
Now would be a good time to take a look at the writing system of Vietnamese. And the first thing you'll notice is that it is based on the Latin alphabet, as opposed to other writing systems of Asian languages, which are a lot more complex. It is slightly different. There are different diacritics they use, like the hat or the hook, on top of certain vowel sounds. But it is an alphabet which is good for us, easier to learn. It is also a phonemic alphabet. That is to say, each letter corresponds to the sound which it represents. And this is opposed to English, which is not a phonemic alphabet, in that if you were to take two words like sun, S-O-N, and sun, S-U-N, they sound the same, but they are spelt differently. Everything you see here in green, you would pronounce the same as you would in English at the start or the middle of a syllable, except for M and N, which can also appear at the end of the syllable. Now, this is for the south of Vietnam, so there are certain letters, like the R is pronounced as a Z or Z in the north of Vietnam, but any differences between these sounds I will note as we go through. I speak Southern Vietnamese myself, therefore that will be the basis for this series. The letters highlighted in yellow show us the sounds which we have just studied, that being da, h, and ang. And F meaning final consonant, so we have learnt the ng, ang sound in a final position. It also has an initial position, which we'll look at later, and the little asterisk means that there is a variation to this final sound as well. So eventually we will complete this entire alphabet, but already you can see that although you recognize most of those letters, the vast majority of them are not pronounced the same way as in English. So before we look at tones, there's a couple of other sounds we need to take a look at. The English B, ba, ba. This is when air goes out. It's an explosive B sound, ba. Contrast this with the Vietnamese ba sound, ba, 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 ba. This is where air comes in. It's called an implosive B sound. And you can see from the diagrams that in the latter, the glottis is depressed, which means air flows into the mouth and creates this characteristic ba sound. Ba, 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 ba. Implosive sounds are very rare and difficult for English speakers to say. I won't go into much detail into them here, but if you would like more information, see the link in the description where someone called David Peterson, who is a language expert, the guy who created Dothraki and Valerian for Game of Thrones, he has a very good video on it describing how to make implosive sounds. Now take a look at these variations of how we pronounce the letter O. In American English, it's hot. In British English, it's hot. In Scottish English, it's hot. And the Scottish variation is what most closely approximates the Vietnamese pronunciation of the O with the circumflex, or the little hat on top. So these numbers are khom, mot, bon, khom, mot, bon. Now in English, two different vowels can have two different vowel lengths. For example, I in sit is a short vowel, I in seat is a long vowel. However, in Vietnamese, two vowels which are the same can have different lengths. For example, nam and nam, 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 and nam meaning south. This is where the actual name of the country, Vietnam, comes from, meaning the southern land of the Viet people, Vietnam. The next number is jin, jin, and that CH sound is not a ch as in chin or a j as in jin, but it's in between. It's unaspirated and unvoiced. The same with the da sound. So we can still find it if we, for example, put an S in front of chin and try and say that word. Jin, jin, lose the S, jin, 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 and we get the right sound. The I sound here, again, not exactly the same as English. It's not an I as in jin or E as in jean, but it's in the middle. Jin, jin.
Nam, 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 nam. Nam, 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 nam.
Now, along with single vowel sounds or monophthongs, we also have diphthongs, as in the English hi. And in Vietnamese, this is hay, hay. Two vowel sounds combined together, a, e, ai, hay. Now, in this word, hay, the a sound is longer. But if the final vowel is a Y, as in hay, hay, then it's a completely different word, which means or, often, good, or interesting. And this is a very common word in Vietnamese. These two words look similar, but they are pronounced differently. By, by. Number 7 is bai, bai. Notice that there is an elongation on the Y sound.
Hai, hai, hay, hay. Hai, hai, hay, hay. Hay, hay. Bảy, bảy. Hay, hay, bảy, bảy.
Looking back at the Vietnamese alphabet, we can see that everything here highlighted in green, we know already, is the same as English, don't worry about it. Everything here highlighted in yellow, we've just learnt. And I appreciate that there are a lot of new sounds here. For example, da, o, ja, ha. And you need to be able to say all these sounds correctly in order to be able to say your phone number. If you say these sounds incorrectly, then at best you will have a thick Western accent, and at worst you'll be unintelligible. And if we couple this with an incorrect tone, which we'll look at in a minute, then you'll basically be talking your own language, and anyone listening will just hear noise. Phát âm, yo, pronunciation, tones. And now we get to what is often considered the hardest part of Vietnamese pronunciation for foreigners to learn, and that is tones. It's the most difficult because it's the biggest phonological difference. Vietnamese is a tonal language. English and Western languages generally aren't. And the best way I found to learn these is first by looking at English. Now, English tones convey emotions. What do I mean by this? Well, let's look at these three words. What, 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 what. These three emotions directly correlate to three of the tones in Vietnamese, which we'll look at in a minute. And if we look at the tonal contours, you can see the first one, what, it's flat. Put it into more context. Let's say your wife is shouting at you from the kitchen. What do you want? What do you want now? It's a flat, bored monotone. What? Maybe you've won the lottery. What? I've won the lottery? Or what? Some girl tells you she likes you. You weren't expecting it. It's a questioning tone. You're a little confused. What? And if we can put ourselves in the mindset of these emotions when we say Vietnamese words, then they should come out more correctly. So applying this idea of English tones equal emotions to Vietnamese numbers, we have ba, I'm really bored, robotic, flat tone. Next, bon, I've won. Oh, really? Excited or exasperated tone. Next, bye, I like you. Really, bye. I'm questioning. I'm a little confused. These first three tones we looked at, ba, bon, bye, all have emotional equivalents we can find in English. The fourth, however, mot, has nothing analogous in English. And the best way to visualize it, for me anyway, is as a snake constricting a branch. So the vowel sound is very low and constricted or shortened. Nghe và nói lại. Listen and repeat. Nói lại, meaning repeat. Nói, speak. Lại, again. So together they mean repeat. And you can see here the four tones we've just looked at and the numbers 0 to 9, which have been grouped into these four tones. So using the principles we've learned so far about how to produce the individual sounds and the various tones, listen to the native speaker and repeat after her.
2, 3, 5, 0, 4, 6, 8, 9, 7, 1.
Nghe và nhìn. Listen and look. And now let's do some receptive practice. So listen to the number, look or point at it, and wait for it to light up to see if you're correct.
6, 9, 3, 2, 5, 4, 7, 0, 8, 1.
Xem và nói. This time, wait for the number to light up, try and say it correctly, and then listen for the correct pronunciation to see if you were correct.
4 9 6 0 1 3 2 7 8 5.
In this exercise, now you're going to listen to a full phone number and you need to write it. Nghe và viết. So just pause the video a moment so you can get a pen and paper.
0809 515 414 0809 112 990 0809 662 123 0809 787 878.
Now listen to the phone numbers and try and repeat directly after them.
0809 515 414 0809 112 990 0809 662 123 0809 787 878.
So, what's your phone number? I'd encourage you to keep repeating it, maybe in front of a mirror. Try and get used to the sounds, the different tones. And I'd encourage you to go over all the sounds again in this video until you've really got them. Bear in mind that Vietnamese isn't a European language. The phonology and tonal structure is so different that if you can't pronounce these fundamental sounds and tones at the beginning, then later on it will just cause you lots and lots of problems in trying to communicate effectively. And remember that your tongue and your throat are muscles, like your fingers in your hands. And after enough repetition, you will get muscle memory. They might be difficult to pronounce initially, these sounds, but repeat them more and more, and your tongue muscles, your throat muscles will become familiar, and you'll be able to produce them much more naturally. Bài học tiếp theo. Next lesson. So, next lesson we will look at some other sounds which are difficult to pronounce. We learned quite a few today already, but there are many more to look at. And we'll also have a look at the Vietnamese tonal structure in more detail. We learned 4 tones today, but there are 6 in total. The main focus will be on Vietnamese pronouns and how we can start using them in a natural conversation. So, cảm ơn các bạn cho xem video này. Hẹn gặp lại.